We don't know exactly what transpired over the weekend. We don't know if this report in the Wall Street Journal precipitated something of a battle, if you will, in the boardroom behind the scenes. How is it that David Solomon, who was co-president with Harvey Schwartz until moments ago, emerged the sole president, and why is Harvey retiring from the firm?
We have some breaking news to bring you. We've been expecting at Goldman Sachs naming a new CEO. David Solomon is going to be replacing longtime chief executive Lloyd Blankfein, who's been at the company for many years.
How does someone get rejected twice by Goldman Sachs and still end up winning an intense cage battle to be selected as CEO? And how does he run the most prestigious bank in the world while also DJing at Lollapalooza and partying in the Hamptons with the Chainsmokers? Most people know David Solomon as the CEO of Goldman Sachs, but most people don't know that his path wasn't clean, linear, or traditional. He didn't break into banking right out of college, and his dad wasn't a bank executive. So how did he rise, and why did his unconventional path end up giving him more leverage than the people who looked perfect on paper? Today, we break down the full story of how one of the most powerful bankers in the world blazed his own path and denied all standard formulas. This is the unlikely story of David Solomon, aka DJ D-Soul. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you've seen a lot of videos from me about teaching you how to break into banking. But this video is about the long game. And what drives a successful long-term finance career isn't school prestige or building DCFs, it's the decisions, habits, and experiences that compound over time.
In taking that job, and over the last 19 years, I think in many contexts that David has shown that he plays the long game. He's patient, deliberate, disciplined, and for the most part, mostly right.
Today, we'll be going over how Solomon started off his career at unglamorous firms and how he used those experiences to build a reputation that allowed him to walk through Goldman's doors as a partner, then how he was put into a cage match to become CEO, and his multiple controversies and accomplishments as Goldman's top dog. It's a story that involves succession-like power struggles, securities fraud, embarrassing public failures, and Lululemon sweatpants, and you'll see how an unconventional path led to the crown of Wall Street. Now, before we get into it, I want to talk about something Solomon said recently that I think is worth paying attention to. He said that AI can now draft 95% of an IPO prospectus in minutes, and I can tell you from my time at JPM that writing an S1 is one of the most time-consuming, grinding tasks analysts work on. The fact that Goldman CEO is saying AI can do 95% of the work for that task really tells you where the finance industry is heading, and that's where the AI for Business and Finance Certificate program from Columbia Business School Executive Education and Wall Street Prep is worth considering if you want to prepare for the future. Over 8 weeks, you'll learn about core AI concepts like LLMs and machine learning, get hands-on experience using Python to solve business problems, and see how top firms use AI in FP&A, risk, investment management, and more. You'll be taught by world-class Columbia professors and also have a chance to learn from a ton of great guest speakers who work at firms like Google, OpenAI, and Perplexity. If you're interested, be sure to use my code rareliquid to get up to $500 off, and I'll leave information for everything discussed in this video's description. With that, let's go back into Solomon's story. Solomon's humble beginnings don't start anywhere near Wall Street. He was born in Hartsdale, New York in 1962, and his father worked in publishing while his mother worked in audiology. He worked at a local Baskin Robbins and as a camp counselor in high school, and afterwards went to Hamilton College, not an Ivy League, where he played on the rugby team and joined the social frat Alpha Delta Phi.
So you went to Hamilton College because you admired Alexander Hamilton, or?
Well, I went to Hamilton College because I didn't get into Williams.
Oh.
Graduation arrives in 1984, and he takes his first big swing by applying to Goldman for an analyst role, and Goldman says no. And so he finds another entry point into finance by joining Irving Trust, where there's no prestige or glamour, but it's where he learns about credit, risk, and real financial fundamentals, a key foundation that later powers every major move he makes in his career. A few years into working at Irving, Solomon decides to shoot his shot once again at Goldman, who again rejects him like he's nothing. But at a cocktail party in 1986, Solomon gets introduced to a few people from Drexel, which at the time was the beating heart of the junk bond boom. Junk bonds are high-yield debt issued by companies that couldn't get investment-grade ratings, and under Michael Milken, Drexel turned junk bonds into a multi-billion-dollar machine, financing LBOs, hostile takeovers, and corporate restructurings at a pace no one had ever seen, and rewriting the rules of modern finance in the 1980s. Drexel was expanding fast, and they needed a very specific type of person, someone who could explain complicated instruments to clients clearly, someone with genuine credit judgment, and someone reliable enough that senior people would trust them with real relationships.
There was a group that was part of the junk bond business there that was hiring liberal arts majors because they thought they had great communication skills, that had worked at banks and had credit backgrounds so they could actually sell and talk about these securities.
That combination was extremely rare in 1986, and it described David Solomon perfectly. And so Solomon joins Drexel as a commercial paper salesman, quickly transitions into the junk bonds group, and this is where something important happens. The skills Solomon had quietly been building, the credit judgment, the communication ability, the discipline to earn trust in unglamorous environments, suddenly became a competitive advantage inside the most influential financial engine of the decade. Solomon thrives in that meritocratic environment for 4 years as a standout performer, but Drexel's story comes to an abrupt halt with a dark ending. In 1990, Michael Milken was charged with securities fraud and junk bond manipulation. Drexel collapses, but Solomon had developed something that survived the firm's fall: real expertise in high-yield credit, a network of client relationships, and a reputation that traveled with him. And so in 1990, Solomon joins Bear Stearns to lead their entire junk bond division and thrives while managing institutional clients and making decisions with real commercial consequences. At Bear Stearns, Solomon needed to rely on his own judgment because there was no blueprint for what he was building, and experiences like that are what separates future leaders from people who simply work within the system. And it's exactly what primed him for his future role as the leader of Goldman Sachs. On one project, Solomon financed a struggling movie theater company in Dallas through a complicated bond transaction. It's exactly the kind of unglamorous, technically complex, relationship-intensive work that most senior bankers would delegate. But David himself gets the deal done, and that pattern of showing up fully for clients starts to become his reputation. By the mid-1990s, he's sitting on Bear Stearns' 10-person management committee, one of the most powerful groups in Wall Street, and it looks like he's going to be there until he makes partner.
We're among the top 10 people running the firm, and I was 33 years old, and so I really thought I was going to stay at Bear Stearns forever, and I was certainly, at a very young age in a position where I had a big career there.
But in 1999, it's not that Solomon applies to Goldman. The tables now turn, and it's now Goldman that's recruiting him.
Well, well, well. How the turntables.
While working on a financing deal for the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas, Solomon impressed the Goldman bankers he worked with so much that they invited him to be on their side of the table as a partner. And I need to explain why this is such an unusual event.
I was competing for a piece of business with a Goldman Sachs partner whose name was John Winklereed. At the end of competing for that piece of business and actually doing that piece of business, it was actually a financing for Sheldon Adelson, who was building big casino hotels in Las Vegas. We raised them $1.2 billion in 1998. I started getting recruited to come to Goldman Sachs, and I had been in a pretty senior position at Bear Stearns, but I really thought it was an opportunity to go to work for what I believed was the most extraordinary financial firm on Wall Street.
Goldman is very insular, and most partners at Goldman are homegrown and are promoted internally because you need to prove yourself inside the firm and build internal political capital. So even if you didn't work your entire career at Goldman, usually you spend at least a decade before ever becoming partner. Solomon is one of the few partners to have zero experience within the firm and go straight to partner, which is hugely ironic given that he got rejected by Goldman twice, but got to skip the entire line to the highest non-executive position. Solomon was able to do this because he had the credit foundation from Irving, the high-yield expertise from Drexel, and the franchise building experience from Bear Stearns, with a full network of clients across the world, and again proving he could enter unfamiliar environments, earn trust quickly, and deliver results under pressure. All his unglamorous work paid off, and at age 37, he joined Goldman as co-head of high yield and leverage finance, a core part of the investment banking division. Just as he always does, Solomon rises through Goldman fast. From 2006 to 2016, he runs Goldman's entire investment banking division, increasing sales by 70% and margins from 11% to 22%. He achieves this in part through a practice that Goldman insiders still talk about, the year-end compensation roundtable. Instead of letting senior bankers coast on relationships they have and titles, Solomon introduced a system where he would personally grill senior bankers about their business practices, their client strategies, and basically their actual commercial impact.
Betty, it's an annual ritual at Goldman Sachs. Every year, the firm targets the bottom 5% of its workforce.
It was designed to weed out underperformers, and it worked. It pushed Goldman's banking culture toward accountability in a way that had lasting effects on the division's performance. Solomon was also known for his antics of doing anything to get a deal done, no matter how unglamorous. During a pitch in 2007 to lead Lululemon's IPO, Solomon walks into the meeting in a maroon blazer and Lululemon sweatpants while everyone else is wearing suits, and he wins the IPO and the story becomes a legend inside the firm. In December 2016, as Lloyd Blankfein plans for his successor, he pits two of his biggest lieutenants in a fierce internal cage match by making them co-COOs. On one end is Solomon, leader of banking and a client-facing dealmaker, and on the other is Harvey Schwartz, who comes from a trading background and is highly respected internally. It really is a fascinating case study of succession that unfolded in real time in front of the world's eyes, where Goldman pit a leader from banking and a leader from global markets, and I'm sure the internal politics was intense and downright nasty.
It's something of a battle, if you will, in the boardroom behind the scenes. How is it that David Solomon, who was co-president with Harvey Schwartz until moments ago, emerged the sole president, and why is Harvey retiring from the firm?
But as we all know, Solomon wins the battle, and in March 2018, Schwartz resigns, but don't feel too sorry for him because he's a millionaire and also became the CEO of Carlyle. Lloyd Blankfein then retires, and Solomon takes the throne as CEO on October 1st, 2018, and when told the news, he describes his reaction with a line that is both hilarious and deeply human.
Wow, this actually really happened. And then my next reaction was, oh my God, did I just catch the bus by the tailpipe?
Third time's the charm, the kid who got rejected by Goldman twice is now running the most prestigious bank in the world.
I want to ask you all to join me in welcoming the next chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon.
As the CEO of Goldman, Solomon has had a tumultuous but overall successful track record. Barely a week after officially becoming CEO, Solomon's previous personal assistant committed suicide after jumping from the 33rd floor of the Carlyle Hotel minutes before he was scheduled to go to court for stealing $1.2 million worth of Solomon's wine. As CEO, Solomon also came in swinging big, which also led to his biggest stumble, Marcus. Many of you watching have probably used or heard of Marcus. It was basically Goldman's attempt of creating a Main Street consumer-facing bank like JP Morgan's Chase, with savings accounts, personal loans, and credit cards. Marcus launched in 2016, so it actually preceded his time, but Solomon championed Marcus during investor days as a central part of Goldman's strategy and promised it would break even by 2022. But when that year came, Solomon was grilled by analysts during conference calls where he had to admit the consumer business was still losing money, eventually losing around $3 billion, and it was a brutal public reckoning. Then there was the 1MDB scandal. Goldman had arranged bond deals for a Malaysian sovereign wealth fund from 2009 to 2014 that turned into one of the largest financial frauds in history. The firm paid nearly $3.2 billion to settle government investigations across 4 countries, and even though it preceded his CEO tenure, Solomon's 2020 pay was cut by nearly 40% as a consequence, and he took accountability publicly for the institutional failure.
Goldman Sachs agreeing to pay an additional $2.6 billion in fines for the 1MDB scandal to regulators in the US, the UK, Hong Kong, and Singapore. It follows a $1.5 billion payment to Malaysian authorities already.
Then in March 2021, an internal survey from 13 first-year analysts at Goldman's SFTMT group talking about the working conditions at Goldman went viral, indicating an average of 95 hours a week and severe decreases in mental and physical health, with one even saying that banking at GS was worse than foster care. In 2023, the most damaging piece ever written about Solomon was released by the New York Magazine, which I'll link to in the description below. The hit piece said that everyone describes Solomon as a bully with a short fuse who writes emails in all caps, who was given the job of CEO not because people liked him, but because he made money. It also said that Marcus wasn't just a bad decision, but a management failure, because he kept telling execs to go bigger, and dismissed anyone who pushed back as lacking vision. His DJ activities, which a lot of junior bankers thought was cool, was internally hated by partners who thought he was using the Goldman platform for personal branding and was playing at Lollapalooza while telling junior bankers they weren't in the office enough post-COVID. Blankfein even turned on him publicly, saying in front of 15 partners, "God, I wish he'd spend less time on the plane and more time making money." Over 200 partners also left since he took over, including his PR chief and chief of staff who served various Goldman CEOs. He even told a group of students at Hamilton College that he does more in a week to help climate change than you will ever do in your entire lives. And the bottom line the piece lands on is that his greatest protection is that there is no obvious replacement for him. So yeah, people absolutely hated this man, and you may be wondering how he still has his job. For all his faults and all the hate, one thing you cannot deny is Goldman's performance and the right moves Solomon has made. Since Solomon took over in October 2018, Goldman Sachs has outperformed every major banking peer, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, by a significant margin. He made the hard call on Marcus, he ate the reputational hit on 1MDB, he kept the trading business and banking franchise sharp, and he even stopped DJing and hasn't performed since July 2022. The results over time have been louder than the media narrative, and we all know that CEOs aren't always the nicest people. So you probably hate David Solomon right now, and no one can blame you, but the same qualities that make him easy to dislike, his relentlessness, his ego, his grand ambitions, all of which made him difficult to work with, are exactly what got him to where he is today. Goldman rejected him twice, and so he created his own path to the firm by joining Irving Trust, then Drexel, then Bear Stearns, taking on deals nobody senior wanted to touch, and building a reputation that eventually made Goldman come to him. He didn't stumble into becoming a Goldman partner, he made himself impossible to say no to. Careers are long and they never go the way you expect. And when you look at someone who's made it, it always seems like it came easy to them, but that's really never the case. If you get really good at what you do, even if your path isn't littered with brand names and prestige, people will notice. And once they do, how you deliver every day, how you lead others, and how you bet on yourself starts to matter a whole lot more.
David has shown that he plays the long game. He's patient, deliberate, disciplined, and for the most part, mostly right.
So there you have it, David Solomon, CEO, DJ, a guy with no Harvard degree who runs the bank every finance bro wants to work for. And if by chance you're watching this video because you're interested in breaking into banking, I recently put all of my best advice into a 15-part email newsletter that covers every step of the banking recruiting process. It's from my experience as a JP Morgan banker, recruiting captain, and from helping hundreds of candidates break into banking at all the top banks. It's completely for free, and if you're interested, sign up on rareliquid.com or scan the QR code on the screen. So that wraps up the video, but while Goldman is the most prestigious bank in the world, JP Morgan is the most powerful. If you want to understand how that happened, the next video is for you.